Hey, it's Swedenborg Live. What's up, everybody? So excited to get to talk about the important things in life with all of you. And oh yeah, I'm Curtis Childs. I'm director here at Off the Left Eye, and I've got a really great panel with me here of expert Swedenborg scholars. First one, Cara Dom. Hello, Cara. Welcome.
Hi, Curtis. Happy to be here. It's a beautiful, beautiful spring day today, and I really loved getting out there in the flowers and the birds. Hope we're gonna have some fun tonight.
Excellent. Yeah, springtime of the mind to come here. Sitting next to Cara virtually is Chelsea Odner. How are you, Chelsea?
Hey, Curtis, and hey, everyone else. I'm so happy to be here. And yeah, I always look forward to the places we'll go, spiritually speaking, together on this during this time. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And journeying to those places with us, rounding out our motley crew, is Karin Childs. Welcome, Karin. How are you?
Hello, Curtis and Chelsea and Cara and everybody. Thanks for coming. And yeah, looking forward to talking with you all about just interesting things, thinking about this spiritual dimension of life and how it affects our earthly life and what to do about it all. So glad to be here.
Excellent. And I got to say something. I just say something important. Tonight, not only are we doing Swedenborg Live, but this is the start, the launch, the kickoff of our Remembrance campaign at the Swedenborg Foundation. So this is where we're giving a chance to anybody to give a donation in memory or tribute to a loved one. And this campaign officially starts tonight. It runs through the end of May, where we're going to announce the results on our live show on the 30th. Every dollar that you gift during this campaign will be matched. So if you give $5, we'll end up getting $10 to do our mission of spreading Swedenborg's message, all the way up to $15,000 of matching. We had a very generous anonymous donor couple support us by giving that $15,000 that we can only really unlock if we get contributions from all of you that match that over the course of this month. So everything you do here goes twice as far. And it gets even better. You can actually organize other people that you know to conduct your own mini campaign. So you can be a fundraising nucleus for us. And the individual that or team that raises the most money will be hosted to some personal time with our Off the Left Eye personalities before an upcoming show. So you could hang out with us backstage before this show. To donate tonight, all of your donations will go towards this. Go to offthelefteye.com or otle.com/donate. We will be keeping track of what we can raise tonight. Let's start this thing out with a bang and get us moving towards our goal of 15,000 before the end of May. Okay, cool. So let's get to the questions. If you're new here, just write a question in the chat. We'll try to grab it and get to as many as we can. The first one is from Too Many Feathers, who asks, in studying coping strategies related to overwhelming trauma, I've encountered individuals who disassociate in varying degrees. Where does the soul go in such circumstances, and how can it reconnect? That's a great thing to think about. And I don't know if we've ever had a question quite like it here. So let's see what we can say. Karin, do you want to start us off?
Sure. From what I understand, disassociation, when that happens in connection with trauma, is a protective measure. I was reading an article about it, and this article was saying that it's one step beyond fight or flight. It's a response to danger and trauma, and it's a way to protect oneself from fully experiencing something terrible or violent. And so it's a kind of protective measure, but I do understand, like, some people can get, just like we can get caught in fight or flight stress patterns, even when there isn't any danger anymore. That can happen for some people with disassociation. It's very interesting to think about what's happening with a person's spirit. I know that it doesn't seem that the person is completely separated from their earthly life or unaware of it, so to speak. But just that, from what I was reading, again, I haven't experienced it myself, but that they feel like they're not quite fully there. They can see what's going on, but maybe can't feel all the sensations, or really feel like they're totally there in their body. We definitely have so many layers and levels to us, and I think that there are there are parts of us and parts of our being and our spirit that are in many different levels of the spiritual world as well as the physical world. And I wonder if a person there is, just one step back from, it into a slightly deeper level of who they are. I'm not sure. Chelsea, you had some thoughts. Do you have something to continue from there?
Yeah. I think I just find the research that is going on nowadays into trauma and how to heal trauma is so interesting. And in what I've looked at, it is amazing how I feel like it does. I mean, I'm coming from a Swedenborgian perspective to begin with, but I see it paralleling what Swedenborg describes about how our spirit interacts with our body. And so just the fact that it seems like it's a sort of angle on noticing that we have a spirit and that can be more or less in our body, like we can kind of get detached, even though obviously there's still a life connection going on, but that it can fluctuate. And what I understand from trauma is a lot of it is needing to come back into a sense of safety, addressing what the source of the trauma is and what those triggers are, and obviously create external safety if that doesn't exist. But if you are able to understand through the help of a therapist or something that you have safety, then there's skills. Sometimes they're called like mind body, to understand the safety that's there, that you can recreate a sense of safety. And what's interesting to me is like what creates that safety is a trust in love, like needing to trust in the reality of love, inside. And that's something that just, psychologists have found just like empirically that's what creates a sense of safety. And and then Swedenborg is writing how that that love is our life, and that we need that is what grounds us. And so it kind of makes sense to me that when we lose a sense of safety, we need to reconnect into a trust in love, and then that helps us ground into our body. And that kind of connects too, for me, with, I don't know how to say this simply, but just, one of the core things that Swedenborg describes, like the theology of God, is the union of the divine and the human, that there's this power in our embodiment. And so, I don't know, it's just interesting that there's something important for our spiritual development to feel these things in our body. And so that trauma response that as a coping mechanism gets us to dissociate, that is that's something that we need to address, that there's something like, okay, no, let's get you back into your body, get you into a place of safety. And that's healing. So that's just interesting that there's this embodiment element to healing, to feeling safe. So I don't know if I'm sort of saying that, but I will say there's interesting, a book that I love that I'm really enjoying that's called The Transformation, that's by a doctor, James Gordon, who runs the Center for Mind Body Medicine. He describes, if I have that right, he describes these mind body skills that are really effective for healing trauma. And it's all about getting back into your body with trust, with love, with safety. And so it's fascinating stuff to think about.
Thanks to both of you. And that's great to have those resources too. I feel like the connections between the study of trauma on the, physical side or the earth side, and then spiritual ideas about how the mind interacts. I think there's a ton in there, and I love getting to hear some of it here. Let's go to the next question. Hey, we're 0% of the way to our goal. Go to offtheLefteye.com or OTLE.com/donate if you want to get your gift matched 2-to-1 to help us spread the message. Second question is from Sin G, who asks, a gentleman shared that his loved one told him 1 hour in heaven is about 4 days on earth. This helps me understand the normally calm, happy demeanor of our loved ones when they visit us. What do you say? So is part of the reason why it doesn't drag on for people in the afterlife, that it goes a lot faster? What do you think, Cara?
That's so interesting. I'm assuming this loved one was coming from the other side to tell that gentleman that. Swedenborg talks about how there just is not a measurement of time like we have on this earth. Our time is dependent on the physicality of the earth going around the sun, and the revolution of the earth and all that kind of thing is how we measure time. But in the spiritual world, it's a spiritual state. It's a state of our mind and a state of our heart. And one thing Swedenborg says is that angels, i.e., all the inhabitants of heaven, the former human beings who have chosen a life of love and kindness and helpfulness to other people, that their part of their wisdom, he says, is knowing that they don't think about the past and they don't think about the future. So they're in the present moment. Now is all there is. Very new agey now, but this was, 250 years ago that Swedenborg was writing about this. So I think it is that secret. Whether it's 4 days to R1, I don't know. Our job is to tell you what Swedenborg wrote about. And so that concept of time being just dependent on our own state of mind. What kind of thoughts are we in? What kind of state of love are we in? But so that would just be that you are where you are emotionally, intellectually, as long as you're there. And then the state changes and you move on to something else. So I think whether that equivalent that this loved one mentioned is accurate or not, sounds good. In other words, there's more time there. There's no rush. They've got eternity. There's a lot of peace when you're just in the moment and not worried about getting on to the next thing, or worried about what happened, or worried about what you have to do next. So I dare say there's a few different sources of that kind of peaceful presence that people have when they're visiting from the other side.
I love that. I think that's such a great point about just how calm and, if you're not having to worry about what you have to do tomorrow, then yeah, you're going to feel a lot more peaceful. And the other thing that popped to my mind in response to this question was what Swedenborg says about heavenly language, and that angels can communicate in a single word or a single something that would take so much time to say in earthly language. And so that's a way that, like, even though he says that, we just have to wonder, what is the one-to-one? How does time progress? Like, we're living in time. The spiritual world is outside of time and space. That's somehow inside of us at the same time. But that's one little angle, is that language. So I sort of get the sense of like, well, 1 hour in heaven is like, you can cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time when it comes to like getting information, having communication that in this world, we gotta work for it, talk again and again, take more time. So even just thinking about that in terms of communication, and it's interesting to think about it the way this person has said they were shared with them that insight, because I almost love the this connects to both things, the way that spirits or angels, when they do communicate to us, or like through our dreams and stuff, it's often in these like very short, precise, pithy, just like boom, there's this like drop of knowledge and wisdom and perspective. And so even that phrase, 1 hour in heaven is about 4 days on earth. Like if that's how it was said, it's like, I wonder what all that contains. There might be a lot of depth in even that one idea that was conveyed. So. Oh
yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's such a good point, that even that announcement has something to it. Karin, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, yeah, I really love what you all have been saying. And I have always felt like the people on the other side, like when there's waiting for reunions, that it would just not seem like a long time, like it does for us on Earth when we're waiting to reunite with someone over there, that for them, the time will pass peacefully and quickly, and it will just, now it's, the time will be right, but I also wanted to say, I'm just fascinated life, but sometimes he would talk in terms of time. Like he would say, I was doing this in the afterlife for about 2 hours, and or people are in the world of spirits for no more than 30 years or 20 years. And so he would sometimes describe something happening and compare it to a number of days or hours, even though he also says there isn't time. So I'm just really interested that this person who communicated from the afterlife also was using, language of time, even though the afterlife is timeless. And I think that's maybe just to give us a kind of sense for the feel, like maybe kind of the feel of what we would feel would be a 4-day experience for them passes much more quickly, like just an hour, just to help communicate to us earthly people who are time bound. So I find that fascinating and sweet, really, just trying to talk our language.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing about Swedenborg's time references, even though he's saying that spiritual stuff is state, not time. So great thoughts, everybody. I love getting to hear all that. We had donations come in. We get some thanks to say. We want to say thanks to Jonathan. We want to say thanks to Tim. We want to say thanks to Desiree. And then to Stephanie. And we're now up to $360.
Wow.
With our matching.
Wow.
Carry the one into, it's twice that much. So offtheLeftEye.com/donate if you want to help us kick off our campaign, and every dollar you contribute tonight gets matched 2-to-1 by a generous donation that we got. Okay, let's see what we want to do for question 3. This is from John Bishop, who asks, if everything we think and feel is essentially feedback about our proximity to our soul and God's love, why do religions seem to interfere with the spiritual development of so many religious people? Karin, yeah, what do you think?
Well, I think there's just a long history of things that answers to that. Long ago, that people could easily be guided by the feedback of their proximity to God, and they were very aware and could easily read the signs of where their spirit was and what needed to happen to get closer to God. But that intuition got blocked off as humanity got more enamored with the external world. And so actually there had to be a big reboot of how people learned about God, because humanity lost that intuitive knowledge about God and how to be close to God. And so God provided instead like teaching, that people would receive teachings, and then it could be written down or passed down orally. And then religion had to come into being, meaning a set of teachings. Like humanity needed sets of teachings to learn the concepts that then could lead them towards awakening to that awareness of God. And then the sad thing is that was a good and necessary thing, but it got corrupted along the way. We have a show called When Religion Went Wrong, and it's about the meaning of the Tower of Babel story, that people started using religion for selfish power. And so we have now this mixed bag of how religion is a tool, is just a tool, and it can and does help a lot of people to just gain some concept of God that then they can use to start on their own path of a relationship with God. But sadly, often too, people get very messed up through with false teachings, or discouraging teachings, or a frightening God idea. So it's a mixed bag, sadly, but it was meant to be something good and helpful, and we need to try to bring it back to that.
Nice. Those are such awesome thoughts, Karen. And it's always fun to throw these questions around, because I feel like I know everybody's going to share a different angle, that it's like, I don't feel like I have to answer the whole question. It's just like, okay, here's one other little thing to think about, another point to reflect on. So two concepts to kind of like supplement and add to what Karen was sharing is, I think about how we live in a world of appearances. Like, that's the nature of the world we live in. And Swedenborg talks about how, even the teachings in the Bible are, they're appearances of truth. That's the truth that we're interacting with all the time. It has the appearance of truth, but it's not really true until, you have the life and the love in it. But like Karen was saying, teachings are helpful. That appearance of truth is essential for us to grow and develop into. But I think because we're always dealing with appearances of truth in this way, something that, you can have a written out truth, it's easy for that to become a belief that is really sort of being understood in not the most helpful, loving way, or it's being used in the wrong way against other people, or, that there's pitfalls to that. And so another key thing that Swedenborg says we need for our spiritual development is, he uses the word, well, I'm saying it in English, reflection, that we need reflection is essential to our, to sort of be the catalyst for our spiritual development. And that's our ability to reflect on our own thoughts, to actually think about, so then to even question our own beliefs and why, or, what am I believing? Is this bringing me closer, like he said, closer in that proximity to God's love, or has it actually led me farther away? What's the, we can do an analysis, and then we reflect on, obviously, we reflect on our beliefs, and we could also reflect on our behavior. How are we, how are we behaving? How has that, is this all aligned with my best understanding of God and divine love, or not? And so and I think, certainly there's a history of religions teaching and, or a strain of religion that's like, you have to believe this, don't ask questions, or like, this is the truth, don't reflect on it, and that's questionable. That's what Swedenborg was all about, was like, hang on, like, that's cutting off this essential thing that humans need to spiritually develop, which is to think about the spiritual food they're being fed. And that actually helps, spur our engagement with the divine inside of us, like that leading. And so those two pieces, I think, are players in this, in what you're getting at here, John, about, it's easy for us to just sort of fall prey to appearances of truth that maybe aren't totally true, even if they're true on the surface, but it's like, well, what do you really mean by that? And then that necessity for us to reflect on our thoughts and actions and our beliefs to orient ourselves to love. That's my best take from Swedenborg that I feel like I can grasp right now anyway.
It's a hot take. I like it. I love how you put, when somebody's asking you not to reflect on something, that's a red flag. I think also in John Bishop's question here, saying that what we're feeling and thinking is a feedback about our proximity to our soul and God's love. I think that the way that people react to the religion that they're in is feedback about the state of the love that's in them. I think about the parable of the sower, where Jesus is saying that scattering the seed, that the seed are truths, religious truths. So they're ideas, and the same seeds can go into us in all these different states. But if we've got a lot of thorns around, you're going to see it get choked, which is why you can see people who are holding in their hands the message of Jesus and love your enemies, but yet acting more like the scribes and Pharisees. So it's interesting there that itself is a kind of barometer like the one you described in the first half of your question. A lot's been going on donation wise. I mean, there's been a lot going on. Give me this mic for about 15 minutes here. We had Anonymous, who made a contribution. Thank you. We had Rosemary give in memory of her son and husband. Dennis also made a contribution. Sharon gave, and Daniel gave. So now we're up to 535 raised, which is 1,070 with the matching. So every dollar that comes in tonight gets matched 2-1. And this is actually true through the end of May. So if you're watching this after the fact and you donate right now by going to offtheleftside.com/donate, then you'll get matched as well, thanks to our generous donor couple. Okay, cool. Let's sneak in one more before the halftime break. This is from Matthew Bush, who asks, which books of the Bible did Swedenborg say aren't written in correspondences, or was it that they weren't divinely inspired? What's going on with the stuff in the Bible that's maybe not the main stuff, or is it the main stuff? What does Swedenborg say about all that? Does anybody know? What's the answer to that? Karin.
I can start off. My understanding is what Swedenborg talks about when he's talking about the word and naming certain books that are part of the word and some that aren't. Other books can have correspondences and can have divine inspiration, but he specified something he called the word that has a continuous inner meaning, meaning it's in order, it's giving an inner meaning of the entire spiritual journey of Jesus Christ, and also the entire spiritual journey of us as individuals, and I think of humanity too. You know, there's many layers of meaning, but it's that continuous inner meaning that he's pulling out and putting together in a special way. He did say, for instance, he does not include the book of Job in that bunch. And yet he says the book of Job is written in the language of correspondences, and it does have inner meaning. It's just not part of this continuous inner meaning story. And so that's what I understand him to be saying. And I don't know if I'm not going to list all the ones that he said are not, but he basically includes in the word the 5 books of Moses, Judges, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, and then the Psalms and the prophets and the 4 Gospels and Revelation. So that's what I'll say.
I think that's pretty comprehensive.
Yep.
And there's a couple of outliers, like you mentioned, like sort of shoulder books that are correspondential, Job being the one that comes to mind for sure. And then he's got other things like the epistles that he doesn't seem to say are correspondential, but then I know Dr. Jonathan Rose has done a lot of looking at how it seems like his fondness for them grows as he goes through his publishing of written stuff. But I don't know if he ever goes and says that there's a lot of correspondences in there, although a few lines in them certainly are speaking in the same way. Kara, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, just in terms of that progression that there seems to have been from early in Swedenborg's writings to late, he does in True Christian Religion, which was his last published work, he does sometimes refer to some of those epistles of Paul as the Word, even though back in the beginning with the Arcana, when he listed all the books of the Word, they were not included. So he was loosening up in some way about it. But that's just a piece of evidence that there was a somewhat of a different take on it, that he included quotes from Colossians or whoever in his references to the Word.
Kind of like a band or something. It's like, oh, Sweden was, Arcana Swedenborg when he was young, Secrets of Heaven Swedenborg, he didn't care about those epistles, but then he got a little older and lived more life and slowed down. It's kind of his acoustic, like, no, they're all good. We had Rita gave in honor of Mike. I don't know if I got to mention that last time. But then we also had Christine who gave, and she said, thank you for your life-changing work. Thank you, Christine, for watching and for supporting what we're doing here. Let's take a quick halftime break to say thank you in earnest to the people who have supported us. We like to do this every live show. So first, I want to just take a second to say thanks for everyone who's donated in the month of April. And we're just going to show everyone on screen here. You pause it, save it, print it, laminate it. That's everybody who made what we do possible this month. So thank you. We're all applauding you from here. And as a token of our gratitude, we're going to give away a free ticket to the Off the Left Eye Experience. This is our online full weekend of deep dive into the idea that the spiritual world is all around us, and it's happening in June. So who's it going to be that gets to come and hang out with us at this event? Is that how you do a drum roll? Steve Turtle or Steve Turtle. You are the ticket raffle winner. Should you choose to accept, we would love to see you that weekend. And anybody who has a ticket to the Off the Left Eye Experience can also, even if they can't make it that weekend, watch all the content at their leisure on demand afterwards. So great. And if anyone wants to sign up, just go to offtheLeftEye.com and you'll see a handy sign up right there. It really is cool to get to, every time that we're at the end of a show or a Q&A show, it's always this feeling of, oh, there's so much more we could talk about with this. I know that when we're writing a program or a video, we have to leave so much on the cutting room floor. So getting to do a real deep dive on something is a treat for us, and I think would be a treat for any of you who are interested too. Okay, let's go. Jaden Bonner asks, do you believe that a judgment is coming to earth and after it, the New Jerusalem or Golden Age? What do you think? New Jerusalem. Let's talk about it. Chelsea.
Okay, well, I know there's a lot to be said on this topic, and so I will just start us off here. So Swedenborg is unique. One of the things that he has these 18 published titles that he wrote during the second half of his life, from his mid-50s to his early 80s. During that time, so he began writing his first work, Secrets of Heaven, in the late 1740s, early 1750s. And then he writes in 1757, he's had this spiritual awakening. His eyes open up to the spiritual world. And then he's like, whoa, 1757 comes along and he realizes there's like a whole lot going down in the spiritual world. And so much so that he documents it as like, this is the last judgment that was foretold in the book of Revelation. And but he's like, it's not happening on earth. It's all these major spiritual rearrangements that are happening in heaven that he's witnessing, that he's like seeing all these societal shifts happening and things getting figured out and all this stuff. So he wrote a book about it. You can look up his book that's called The Last Judgment, about it in other places too. And so he's specifically saying it's not coming to earth, but that it is ushering in the spiritual era of the New Jerusalem, that what that means. And that is his main thing is like that's a time when kind of like the spiritual air we all exist in is getting clarified. Like if water is murky, but then you add a like precipitate, it makes it like, all shift apart, and then the water's clear and the dregs fall to the bottom. Essentially like a spiritual process like that went on where people got like really clear about themselves, and then sort of everything got rearranged so that there could be more spiritual light, which according to Swedenborg is truth that's connected to love, reaching all of our minds down here on earth ever since 1757. And the only other thought I'll tack onto that is about this golden age. It's just curious. Swedenborg does say that it's like the era that we're coming across is like the best thing. It's basically what he says, because it's like this fulfillment, but it has this like reaching back to the earliest, to a sort of golden age or earliest state of humanity. It's curious. It's like interesting to wonder, what is he referencing in that, in terms of our understanding now of human evolution. But it also kind of echoes what he says we all go through in our lives, which is we start life in innocence, and then we live through our lives, and then the heavenly state is an innocence of wisdom, like that it has this life experience, and then it's connected to love and truth, and there's this like beauty in that. And so it's kind of a reaching back and a going forward. So those are my little spiel. Take it away, Karin.
That's great. That's great. The New Jerusalem coming at you. Yeah, Karin, don't let me get in the way.
Yeah, that was great, Chelsea. That was a wonderful overview. And yeah, the thing that is so different from how the book of Revelation has been understood for centuries is that, well, Swedenborg says the whole Bible is a document about spiritual life. It's not about physical life. And so the prophecies are, in the book of Revelation and that Jesus spoke about are things about the spiritual world and the spirit, like our spirits. And so he learned that there's not a judgment coming in a physical way to earth. But just like Chelsea said, it's a huge event, huge shift in the spiritual world. And that the golden age comes very gradually. And that's what, it's natural to wish it would just we're doing a series right now about God and evil. And one of the things coming up in that series is that evil can only be removed gradually. So we can only get back to that more pristine state of mind and heart collectively in a very gradual way. And even though we sure see lots of troubles still in the world, if you compare it to past centuries and past millennia, there's been a lot of progress and a lot of awareness about spiritual things, about human rights things, about many awakenings and realizations that have improved the way people think on earth, even though there's still a ways to go. And we have a show called The Spiritual Future of the Human Race, if you'd like to watch that to get some hope. But it takes patience, because it just has to be a gradual process.
Yeah, I love this big picture perspective on what that means that both of you have been illustrating for us. And I'll just add the ever accompanying individual perspective that goes along with whenever Swedenborg describes something that happens for a lot of people, he says it happens for a single person in the same way. So Jaden, earth, like I was saying in the parable of the sower, the earth is your mind. The earth is all of our minds. So there's a judgment coming to earth. All of us are having that kind of separating out that Chelsea mentioned happen in our own mind, where I was just doing this thing about the days of creation and how each of those is about the let there be light, the adding the firmament is when we start to understand that there's stuff in there from God and stuff in there that's not from God. And that separating out, that is the judgment, the movement that happens. And the New Jerusalem's coming and the golden age in us. That New Jerusalem is this picture of this love-centered golden way that we look at life and all the ideas that organizes into this way that leads us to this happy life. So it's going to happen, and it's going to happen for everyone, but it's also going to happen for us in particular.
And add one more thing, because
I
when Chelsea was mentioning a reaching back and a going forward, the cool thing is there was the ancient golden age and there's a future golden age, but the future one is one that we consciously choose, both individually and collectively. The innocence of the earliest people and of our own infancy was, what else could there be? We didn't know anything else than innocence, but the future is we've experienced the muck, and we have an opportunity to choose that we want to go back to that state of love and wisdom.
Yeah, thanks, but no thanks on the muck thing. While we were just chitting and chatting, Henry gave, and he said, "Muchas gracias, adios, Jehovah." And then Dustin gave. So now we got 620 that will be doubled going towards our goal. Thanks, everybody. If any of you would like to add to that exciting total, go to offtheleft.com/donate. Everything you contribute will be as part of our remembrance campaign doubled, because we got this donation that we can unlock as your donations come in. Cool. Let's do some more. This is question number 6. We're making pretty good time here. Gabrielle asks, what is happening to someone diagnosed as schizophrenia when they have visual, tactile, and auditory hallucinations every day? I think I want to just begin by saying that schizophrenia wasn't a term in Swedenborg's day, so he can't know for sure what he would say would fit into the category that people have now designed and called that. But I'm sure he'd have some interesting input on those kinds of experiences. So yeah, Chelsea.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting to note maybe that there have been Swedenborgian psychologists who have worked with schizophrenic patients. One more well-known one is Wilson Van Dusen, where they were exploring what Swedenborg was describing in terms of how spirits are connected to our minds, and then seeing how does that, can that support them clinically with working with people with schizophrenia. And so there's a whole interesting body of work you can look into there. And that I'm not, a professional at, so I can't speak any more to that. But when it comes to just like a knowledge of what Swedenborg says, and maybe it's this, this sort of speculation, is Swedenborg describes, we have a video that is how spirits are connected to your health. And we explore, I think it was just earlier, I was talking about that connection of our soul and our body. And Swedenborg says that really our soul is interconnected. It's everywhere in our body. It is the activity in our body. And, but there's this sort of interface going on where we are spiritual and physical. So, and so there's a clear distinction there. And yet Swedenborg writes about, like, he was a scientist. So he just was making observations about what he was experiencing when these like spiritual phenomenon started happening to him. And he felt like he was aware of sensations he was having in his body and the spirits that they were associated with. And he even though he describes that spirits aren't able to actually like possess our physical body, like there's a, limit there. They can, through their spiritual influence, essentially kind of activate our senses, our physical senses. So what we experience as something physical could be a spiritual influence, even though that doesn't mean a spirit is literally like speaking, like we can basically just that our physical senses, there is some mechanism for them to be sort of, stimulated by spiritual things. And so that just seems like that could very well be a part of somebody who's having even visual, like tactile, auditory hallucinations, that there's kind of a lot of that going on. And that, but as far as like, what does that mean for the psychological state of a person? Like, I feel like that's kind of for psychologists and clinicians to understand further, but those are some thoughts.
Yeah, there was an article that I read, looking at the how spirits can affect your senses that you were mentioning, where the article was saying people who have auditory hallucinations, those hallucinations seem so real for them because there's actually the brain region that's associated with hearing lights up when those hallucinations are happening. I remember seeing that and thinking, well, Swedenborg writes that when you hear spirits, there is an inner root, which who knows what that means, that their voices take, which then activate your organ of hearing. So it could well be that that's the same interface. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Chelsea. Karin, did you have a thought?
Yeah, I was going to mention that, Curtis. I'm glad you brought that up because, right, there's inner routes that our senses can actually get activated. And I was just very interested in the shows we had where we had Jerry Marzinski as a guest who worked with a lot of schizophrenics. And when he started reading Wilson Van Dusen's works and Swedenborg's, he was amazed at the parallels between how Swedenborg described evil spirits work, like their tactics and their kinds of lies, and what schizophrenics were experiencing when they are hearing the voices and things. And it seems to me like I might experience all these voices as thoughts, harassing thoughts or things that make me worried or fearful or upset. And there seems to be just a thinning of the veil somehow that makes some people hear it as voices instead of just experiencing it as thoughts. So I think in our shows that we had Jerry, we were noticing that we all get these, influences from spirits, but for some it'll just be experienced as thoughts, or maybe an ache or pain in the body. Who knows what's going on? But others will have more awareness that there's spirits around, and they'll experience it more vividly and tactilely like that.
Excellent. Well, thank you for expanding that. And Gabrielle, I hope you found that useful. Next question. This is from Les Stevenson, who asks, is it true that God has a book called the Book of Life, that we have a name we'll be called to heaven? So do we have a Book of Life? Is our name written in there or not written in there as it says in the Bible? Yeah, Karin, do you want to start us off?
There are two ways the phrase Book of Life is used in the Book of Revelation. One is like everyone's books of life are getting opened, but also the Lamb's Book of Life is open and seeing if people's names are in there. And we talked about this, I think it was in our What Happens Immediately After You Die. And what I remember, I believe Swedenborg learned about that was we each have a book of life, which is our life review, basically our, everything that we have experienced throughout our life, and every little memory and every little motivation and thought and action. That's our book of life. And the Lord's book of life is the ideal, the heavenly way, the heavenly state of mind, the heavenly kind of life. And the more we, our goal is to align our book of life with the Lord's book of life. And I think that's what's indicated in that symbolism, like is our name in the Lamb's book of life. Have we chosen to align our own story with the Lord's, with the heavenly state of mind that the Lord wants to invite us into.
Yeah, Chelsea, what were your thoughts on that?
Nice. Yeah, I was just thinking again to like I was just saying is about that name, we will be called to heaven. It's just bringing to mind that what Swedenborg says about how we do have a spiritual name that is true, that we receive or we come into a knowledge of or something like that in the spiritual world. And so another episode we have on the spiritual meaning of names is about what that is like, and that the name is, names are your qualities. What it's like, it's really about an articulation of your true self. And so in a way that is, all of that interesting symbolism that Karin was describing, there is an activity of that in heaven when we're there in terms of receiving as our spiritual name.
Okay. I just had a thought. Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Were you done, Chel?
Yes. I was hoping for you to steal the mic.
Okay. Sorry. It's just occurring to me that the thought might be behind a question like this, that there is a limited number of names in this book of life, and that if you're not in it, you lose. And I just want to clarify a thought about that, which is that Swedenborg asserts that what's really happening when we get to the other world is that we are choosing based on what we love and based on a lifetime of choices that has built our spirit. It's really us choosing whether we are in the book of life or not, whether we're going to make it into heaven or so I just don't want people to have this thought that through no fault of their own, their name might be not in the book of life. So it's something that the Lord at creation has written all of our names in the book of life. He created us for heaven if we want to take that journey. So you're not going to lose out because, well, my name just didn't make it.
Yeah, really. I think everyone gets the call, and you can just say, "No, I don't want to." Hey, while we were talking, things are going crazy here. Things are there's chaos, good chaos. So Keith gave in honor of Sandy. Thank you so much, Keith. And then we had Brian gave a really generous donation, and along with it said, "Reading Emanuel Swedenborg is like walking to Emmaus with the Lord."
Oh, wow. Aww,
that's a pretty dope quote. So if anyone's not familiar, the road to Emmaus is when Jesus is walking with his disciples, and it says, and he opened their eyes or something and expounded everything in scriptures having to do with himself. And it's kind of a strange line because the scriptures at that time, they didn't have Jesus in them. They had Moses and Noah, and they had the Israelites, and that is the smoking gun line, really, that shows that there's correspondences in the entirety of the Old Testament that relate to the life of Jesus and everyone. So that's just a very cool way to put it. Thank you, Brian. And thank you for your gift. And then we had Steve make a donation as well. In total, I was going to say we're up to 1,170, but then just hot off the presses, Martha came in and made a donation. So we're now up to 1,220, which is going to be doubled to 2,440 going towards it. So thank you, everyone. And it's just so cool to hear about the experience behind something like Walk into Emmaus, and that people want to gift in honor of it, because it means people are encountering the same stuff I encounter in there. And yeah, let's all work together to get it out. Okay, next one. This is from Young at Heart, who asks, does sin through heredity eventually drop out of our spiritual DNA? I'm thinking that that's not somehow, if that's not somehow the case, a toxic buildup would happen over generations. So sin through heredity, in case anyone's not familiar, is this idea that spiritually, the choices you make, the things that you love, positive and negative, can be passed on to your progeny. So is that like heavy metals that stick around in your cells, or what happens with that? Yeah, Karin.
My understanding is that it can, like, that's part of the mission that for a long time since the fall of humanity, it has been building up. And that's why we, we're born into a burden in our earthly level of our minds with a tendencies towards self-centeredness and materialism. But Swedenborg does say it is possible to have it go the other direction. I remember him specifically talking about when people are working on having genuine love in their marriages and just really working on that, their children that can affect their children. And that was one way he talked about it can go the other direction. And I have to believe that even beyond like biological reproducing, anything we can be doing, working on ourselves, cleaning up our inner act, trying to turn away from ego and towards God, we affect each other. And I think that must be able to help too. Let's go on an upward trajectory. But my understanding is that it is something that can swing back up again as we get more and more spiritually minded and turn towards God.
Let's swing it back right now. Come on, we're all sitting around here and like figuring out how to live our lives and try to be good and learn these truths and everything. Martha, who just had made a contribution, I hadn't seen it come in yet, but she said, "In memory of Sid, thank you for your life-changing work on behalf of the Lord." And then, since then, we had John make a donation. He said, "Love you guys." We love you too, John. And Lisa gave. Went out to 1,270 from 19 donors. Thanks, everyone. Let's try to squeak in one more. Can we possibly answer this in 3 minutes before the games? By the way, we're going to do the games because this was just sponsored by the donors who had provided the matching gift. But now you've obviously all contributed way more than the games are worth. So we're going to be doing those no matter what. Okay, here's 3 minutes. Question 9. Pierre Tardy asks, to say that men/women are the bride of Jesus is very confusing and wrong in my opinion. Do you think so? I think many men may not feel good about that statement. Well, this is a kind of a confusing thing. So what does it mean to be the bride of Jesus, and where does that come from? And let's sort it out really quick. Ready, set, go.
Cara, did you want to start?
Well, just the first thought about, the Swedenborg talks about the church being the bride of Jesus. And the church is composed of everybody in the Lord's kingdom, right? The kingdom of the Lord, which would include all genders. So yes, I don't know where to go from there. Karin, take it away.
No, that's good. We've got to start, and we've got 20 seconds now. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. We'll finish it out.
Yeah, you really have to think everything in the Bible. You have to think about not literal physical people with certain bodies or whatever, but thoughts and feelings. We all have, we're all sons of the kingdom. We're all brides of Christ. We're all the virgins with the lamps. We're all the disciples that were male disciples in the stories. These are parts of all of us. And it just means different aspects of us and different aspects of our relationship with God at different stages and in different levels of us. So you have to think symbolically.
Hey, way to rattle off all those examples.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Like because every one of those Swedenborg goes in depth about what part of us that symbolizes and why. So, Chelsea, let take us home.
Okay, and so the last thought is that I have that phrase like the husband and bridegroom of the church, and that also the symbology that Karin is talking about. The church in us is this quality of like, we've been talking about these ideas, those seeds that are getting planted in our earth, all this stuff. Like it is the framework of ideas that we develop in ourselves. And that church needs to get married to love, to divine love. Like it needs to have that union, or that church isn't going to be much of anything. And so that is the marriage, that marriage language that's being used there is because of that necessity for love to bring truth to life. And so like Karin is saying, you really got to like shake off all the natural world associations you have with those words, but it's saying that same message that truth has to get united to love to have life.
Okay, I love it. I'm going to get in huge trouble for this, but Karin, you can go ahead, even though we're over our time. I just
want to say, you can use the biological symbols to understand, like you were starting to say, Chelsea, about seeds being planted. Well, husband and wife, the man gives seed and the woman receives the seed and produces a child. And so we are the brides of Christ, that we're willing to receive his love, God's love, and produce something from it, receive that and produce it. So that's how we're the bride of Christ.
Yep. Thanks everybody for an awesome slate of questions. And now we're going to get serious. It's time for the games. And the first game is our best friend in the world. It's grading Swedenbot. Let's go.
All right, there's our Swedenbot. And so for anybody who's new here, Swedenbot for real is an AI, if I'm using this language correctly, a computer thing that we fed all of Swedenborg's works to. I mean, maybe you haven't read them all. I haven't read every word of them, but Swedenbot has. And then Swedenbot, having this robotic fluency in Swedenborg, can then, in the way AIs can do this, compose Swedenborgian theology. So this is our sort of embrace of the virtual world we live in, by having to be doing this sort of theologizing with the AI of Swedenborg, our own. So it's just hilarious. This is so silly. So yeah. Swedenbot gives us a readout of a few things that are real quotes from this AI, and then we just give them a grade. So
yeah. And how similar they are to real Swedenborg.
Yes, in terms of the theology we all have read with our human brains. So, so take it away, Swedenbot. Okay. I have also been told that the light flows in from the Lord's face to the point that they were scarcely aware that they were naked.
That's quite a mixture.
Oh, Swedenbot. That sentence didn't end where I thought it was going to end.
Yeah, that went to new places. But so I'm noticing in past shows, I've known what the quotes were going to be, but I didn't this time. And I'm just picking up on, doesn't Swedenborg say that the people in the highest heaven look naked, or are naked, appear naked, or something about that innocence and
yeah,
nakedness.
It's also I think referring to the Adam and Eve story.
Yeah.
Oh, scarcely aware that they were naked. Good point.
I feel like it sounds like the light's cranking up and we're less and less. We're so blissed out that we don't even know we forgot our pants. That's not how it works. Like Lord's light brings clarity. So, I mean, I don't.
What do we want to say? Swedenborg mixed up spiritual experience that Swedenborg had with the literal sense of the Bible.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
It might be even a D. C or D, because it
I was
just
gonna say C.
totally
yeah.
mixed up things together.
Sure. So what do you, okay, C. It sounds like we heard some C's. Great. All right, next one. Okay. The Lord teaches that he leads us to want to be happy and therefore against the divine design. Oh, Swedenborg.
Oh, F, I'm afraid.
Yes. Easy one.
Yeah, that's true. It's an F, right? Because the Lord
would never lead us against the divine design.
can't do that. And being happy is not against the divine design. It's the opposite. So swing and a miss.
Yeah. All right.
But an endearing, adorable swing, all the same, Swedenborg.
Yes.
Good try.
Okay, let's see what the next one is. All right. Regenerate people believe that the Lord is the Son of God and the appearance of God. The same is true of all the sheep, the goats, and the goats in her husband.
Okay.
Oh, Swedenborg had a little too much to drink, I think.
We used our F up already. But I think it's another one.
It's another F. I'm sorry.
It just is. There's such a tangle in there. I don't even know if it's worth teasing it out.
The same is true of all the sheep, the goats, and the husband. Yeah.
Is there anything?
So it's there's a woman whose husband eats goats.
Yep. And I will say too, it bothers me that, regenerate people believe like a certain thing that kind of goes against the grain to me a bit too. Like, regenerate people might have have different beliefs, but they're still in the process of regeneration and everything. So
yeah, I mean, he doesn't really ever use. Sorry, were you done?
Oh yeah, I just said sorry about it, Swedenbot.
And
an off day for Swedenbot.
The appearance of God. He talks about the Son of God. He never really talks about the appearance of God as an entity.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Hey, that's good. Well, the machines are learning, but not that fast. Okay, let's do our next game, which is going to be a battle of wits between all the panelists in Guess That Swedenborg Phrase.
All right, we're gonna have fun trying to guess this real phrase from one of Swedenborg's books, and the contestants will take turns guessing a letter. For every correct vowel, you get 1 point. For every correct consonant, 5 points. If you guess the whole phrase correctly, it's 20 points. But if you guess wrong, you're out. And if you guess a letter that's not on the board, it's -5 points. And the winner, whoever has the most points at the end, doesn't have to do the elevator pitch, is exempt. All right. Man. So we are going to start out with Cara guessing a letter.
High stakes.
Let's go with T.
Yes, there are 3 T's. So that's a good one to start with. Okay. All right, Curtis, how about you?
Can I get an S?
1 S.
What?
An S. All right, we're creeping along. Chelsea.
H.
1 H. Okay, so
tough one.
Step by step. All right, Cara.
N.
Yes, there are 3 N's. All right, that's filling it up a little more. How about Curtis?
L.
4 L's.
So I'm talking about my way back to the top.
All right, and Chelsea.
D.
Yes, 4 D's. 4 D's. All right, maybe a word or two starting to get clearer. Cara, who's in the lead?
R, please.
Oh, 6 R's. Woo.
Whoa.
Look at that. My goodness. Wow, very good. All right, Curtis.
Okay. E.
Woo, 13 E's.
Man, I wish E was a consonant.
I know. Oh, but that's pretty many points nonetheless. Wow. All right. That bumped up the letters. All right. Curtis, do you want to guess or no?
No, I won't guess it.
Yeah. Okay.
Taking too long.
Okay, so I can guess a letter and then I can guess it. Is that I get to do both?
Yes.
Okay, I'll guess M.
1M.
Okay. And so I think it is there are deeper and more external levels to every individual.
Ding, 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 ding. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
I couldn't figure out what that last word was. I thought it was like Gandalf or something.
Yes. That's from Heaven and Hell.
Nice.
351.
Oh,
But
man, Cara still won.
Cara is our winner by
Painful, but cheers for Cara. I'll be a.
If there's any justice, I'll get the elevator pitch, but we'll see.
If there's any justice in the world.
In this crazy world. Okay, speaking of that.
Concept to remember that we all have these levels, more external, deeper levels. Just
yes, really good.
There's a lot to you, all of you.
And it's kind of like the way the games move. It's like Swedenborg was kind of like silly and external today. And then but this is about to get deep here in elevator pitch. Let's go. Okay. This is the game where we have 1 minute to explain what and why something is important. That's a Swedenborg concept of some kind. You imagine you stepped on an elevator, someone asks you about it, you got to give them the pitch. And let's see who's going to be the pitcher. I think it's just between Chelsea and I, right? Or no?
Right,
Karin's in there.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, I didn't see it.
It went by fast, but yeah.
Karin Dreams. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so Karin, the rest of us have all just stepped on an elevator and we say, hey, aren't you that person from that Swedenborg thing? You know, I've always wondered about dreams, according to Swedenborg. What do you think about that? And your answer will begin in 3, 2, 1, go.
The world of dreams is this fascinating meeting point of earthly life and spiritual life, the afterlife and earthly life. And Swedenborg learned that in very ancient times, people were able to get direct revelation through dreams, and like the direct voice of God and direct guidance. And that doesn't happen so much anymore. There are occasionally still prophetic dreams and things like that, but mostly dreams nowadays, if we know how to read that language, which is the language of correspondences, we can learn things about what's going on in our minds, but also it's a reflection of conversations that are being had by spirits and angels that are connected to us. So in this wonderful symbolic world, we can get a little taste of connecting with the afterlife and sometimes even with a loved one.
Oh, ringer at the end there.
I want to stay in the elevator.
That's right.
Like, don't get off now. You just
Yeah.
haven't started.
Go back to the first floor. Cool. Thank you, Karin. Great summary of the importance of dreams and all they can do for us. It's been it felt like 4 days, but it's only been an hour, everyone. Thank you. Reference. Callback, is that what they call that? I want to say thank you to everyone who donated. We ended up with $1,270 from 19 donors, which is going to be matched double and be the kickoff for our remembrance campaign that's going through the end of May. So if you're watching this in post, go to offtheLeftEye.com/donate and you can help us get toward our goal of 15,000 for the month. We're already more than a 15th of the way there. So thank you. And thanks to the panelists. I just love getting to hear firsthand the insights that you all have into the material. So appreciate you spending your time here.
And it was great to be here. The questions are just so big and so real. I felt stumped by a lot of them. So thanks for sticking with us while we just chew them over and walking the path with us.
Yeah, here to what Kara's saying. And I just really love getting to think about these two things together. It gives me new thoughts, and I hope that you feel fed by it and supported in your spiritual journey, whatever that looks like, and know that you are loved.
Thank you. Yes, you are so loved. And we're so grateful. I'm so grateful for your donations, really help us keep doing what we're doing. So thank you so much. And just your presence here in the chat is wonderful. I love how everybody supports each other and talks to each other. And your questions, like they were saying, are fabulous. I just love the brain stretching that goes on and how we can try to think about these things from an angle that Swedenborg gives us and see what we can come up with. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night or day or whenever you're watching this, and we'll see you again really soon.